G'day and welcome back to the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. Our guest today is Sonya Law. Her passion is putting the human back into human resources. She believes if you take care of your people, they will take care of your business. Her professional career in HR spans 25 years in the property, education, telco and IT, pharmaceuticals, engineering, water, FMCG, HVAC, fire and mining industries. She notes a highlight of career being part of the senior leadership team for Hitachi in the mining industry, completing her MBA at Monash in 2018 and studying and working internationally across the USA, Europe and Asia. Important to Sonya is building teams with the right talent, with a high performance culture and aligning people to the strategic goals of the organisation. I'd like to thank Sonya for her time, but enough from me. I will hand over to today's podcast guest, Sonya Law. Sonya, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. So before we get into a discussion around the intersection of leadership and the human resources, the HR function, I'd like to get some sense of what you're doing at the moment in that space, and to thank you for having this conversation that's not necessarily focused on your leadership pathway, but definitely talking about where HR and leadership meet. So first things first, why HR? Why do you do what you do in the HR space?
Well, actually, love people. So I want to, put the human back into human resources. It's not a cliche, it just is. I enjoy what I do.
Liking what you do is critically important in whatever role, whether in a leadership role or not. But in terms of what we're discussing today, what do you see at the big level is the intersection of leadership and the HR function?
Yeah, certainly. Well, on one side, in any business or organization, you've got the people and then you've got the strategic goals. So the intersection, if you like, and the overlap is the leadership, and it's the culture, how things, get done and how well you align the two.
Sure. Look, I'm curious to ask, in the professional circles that you've worked through from that HR view of the world, do you see a lot of difference in leaders practicing HR versus leaders that are not in the HR space? Do you see some differences there? Again, you don't have to
Yeah.
name any one particular leader. Just let's talk in broad terms if we can.
Great question. In my view, functional leaders, they're very specific on what it is, their agenda and what they want to achieve within their function. Whereas HR leaders, we look at the bigger picture, the whole ecosystem, as opposed to just one functional area. So our role is to mobilize all the people and to align them, with the strategic goals and to create a high performance team, but often a specific functional leader is just focusing on one element of that. And it's very much a bit of an art and science, HR. That would be sort of my experience where you've got a HR person and then, a non-HR person.
Yeah, that it's always been of interest to me, and why I wanted to chat with you is I, for a long time at university when I was doing my undergraduate studies, that
Yeah.
HR really appealed to me. And as I got more and more into the study of it and what it actually meant, I built in my own mind, and
Yes.
I think I was off base somewhat with this, is that in my estimation, this is my estimation only, the HR function, not the people, 'cause all good people, but in terms of the function, is not necessarily a function to protect employees, but it was a function to protect the business. And I think there are some differing views on that. My perspective, as I've gotten a few more grey hairs and more into my career, is that
Yeah.
if you're doing the HR function well, it's about all of those things: is protecting the
Yes.
business and protecting the people in the business, because you wouldn't have one without the other. So without the people, you don't have the
Yeah.
business to flourish. What's been
Yeah.
your sense of that, and have you found this
Yes.
my ill-informed view, I guess, when I was younger, amongst people when you're talking about HR in general, and then what
Yeah.
leadership means for that?
Well, that's why I champion, putting the human back into human resources, because I believe that the HR person should be employee advocate, which Dave Ulrich talks about, not just for the business. So it does. You have to be quite intelligent and quite innovative in your influencing and impact skills when you're speaking to CEO and advising as to what are the two sides of everything. So it's the people side and the business side. And I've been fortunate, to be in a position where I am an employee advocate. I'm not going to always do, the things that the business think are right for the business. Now, of course, you need to really back that up, with a good business case. And I've even been asked to do a fishbone diagram before as to why I wouldn't go ahead with something. But I always bring it back to really appealing to their empathy and compassion and the importance of valuing the people and developing trust. If I just work on behalf of the business, then I'm not going to be able to mobilize and create a high performance team. And the main component of a high performance team is trust. So it's really, and I've been, the feedback I've received is that I do a really good job of balancing both the business needs and the employee needs. So, I think we could do better there for sure.
Do you find that is qualitatively easier for you in the consulting space versus someone who's embedded in the business? Do you think there's a few degrees of separation that you might have that other HR practitioners don't have? Outside of looking in from my perspective only, I could see that you've got a bit more flexibility to be an advocate, whereas I think in some organizations, and again, I think the size of the business matters. I don't think you could get away with putting a business case, even if you thought you should be an employee advocate. Has that ever crossed your mind?
I can, confidently say that I've done that within organizations. So in consulting, you're not getting close enough to the people. You don't have relationships with them. So you can't champion culture. You can't advocate for them because the relationship is between the business owner and then the people. My role is not with the people. My role is to advise the CEO, CFO, and the business owner, but I have no relationship with employees. So no, that's as a HR manager categorically, definitely someone who advocates for people. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's my brand. Anyone you were to ask who's worked with me where I've been the HR manager will say that is Sonya.
yeah,
So
no,
it's not about
that's
my
fair
career.
enough.
It's about
Yeah.
what's best for people. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And look, this isn't something that I've not heard before. Most people, when you're talking about leadership and when you're getting into the weeds of things like the HR function, that you have to have a people focus. I would assume, not having worked in HR, that gets heightened because it's about the people in the business, and
Yeah.
that leads quite nicely into the next topic area, if I can be so bold. Do you believe some leaders ignore the HR function?
It depends on what their experience has been in HR. And I do test that in an organization, what has been their experience with HR. So there's sort of two sides to that. Have they been value creating or have they been diminishing? Have they been problem solvers or have they been roadblocks? Have they been innovators or have they had a fixed mindset? So it comes down to mindset of the HR person. If you can hold space for the person that you're working with and create trust and value, they're going to come back to you. It's just like any sort of customer relationship. And that's where you can change their experience, because 99.9% of the time, they won't get that experience with HR. So for me, they ignore because then they're not getting any value and they feel like they're just talking to a brick wall and nothing's really happening. They don't feel heard or listened to or valued. So they just walk away. Whereas when you're able to do that for people, hold space and genuinely be with them in that moment and help them, then that's what builds your great, it's customer service. HR are there to serve the people, right? That's why we have a job. But sometimes ego gets in the way and power with a lot of HR people. But when you take the time to actually listen and understand what's at the root cause, I'm daughter of an engineer, so I try to understand the problem and then think up a solution, keeping everybody sort of, moderately happy. So there's always, a few ways to skin a cat.
So, yeah, no, look, and I agree with what you're saying. I guess in trying to understand how leadership intersects with HR, one question I've got for you, this is more curiosity on this topic area, is around as you trained to become a HR professional, once you got into the field, so to speak, and you're applying your trade, did you get a lot of training initially around dealing with leaders in the HR function because you're dealing with staff that are at different levels within the organization? Was that a focal point, or did you develop experience of how to deal with leaders who are potentially a problem in terms of the HR function within the business? How did that play out for you?
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, it's just about how to deal with different levels within the organization. And they're the
Yep.
soft skills. And when I've employed graduates, they struggle with that. I guess for me, I've never struggled with it because I've, always worked with a wide range of people within my community. I think there's a lot to be said for working in your community. I worked in a supermarket for 5 years, and you've got different ages and different people, and that's really where I learned how to deal with people. So I think there's a lot to be said. And I spoke at Melbourne Uni recently about this, and that get as much exposure to different types of people. But, I'm a Kiwi from New Zealand, from a country town, and I learnt pretty fast that you have to treat everyone the same. So I have no problem with that because I know that whether they're a cleaner, whether the CEO, they get the same treatment. So I haven't come unstuck there for treating people differently. I think you've got to literally treat people the same. You've got to assess the situation differently and approach it differently. But I think if if you've got that understanding, you can develop those soft skills, and the best soft skills are really just to listen and learn, and that's the best way to learn, really.
I'm
You don't have to have
interested.
all the answers.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I'm interested in your use of language there around the soft skills. I've had some interesting discussions with some guests around these kind of skills, and not necessarily calling them soft skills. They're the hardest skills to apply when you're talking about the management
Yeah.
of people. And I'm genuinely curious here. Why
Yes.
did we have the language set that HR and people skills are soft skills, where number
Yeah.
crunching and technical expertise are the hard skills? I would flip that around and
Yeah.
say it's easy to be a content
100%.
expert, not so easy to deal with human beings. Do you know why
Yeah.
that exists in the world of work? I'm genuinely curious because I never knew why someone
Yeah.
grouped HR as a soft skill.
Yeah, because it's a real art. Soft skills, hard skills are technical. I used to do computer programming and accounting in my first undergrad. So, they're really easy skills, right, for me to do finance or accounting and computer programming. It's just the way it is. But with people, it's more complicated. There's a lot of observation, there's a lot of reflection, there's a lot of testing and trial and error and trying sort of new methods. You really have to think on your feet. So the softer skills are, and I think rightly so called that because they're harder to learn and they take more time, but not everyone, I don't believe, can actually develop those softer skills. People, engineers or technical people, they're attracted to things where it's 1 + 1 is 2. And I'm not meaning to diminish what they do because it's very important, But when someone's attracted to something that they enjoy, they're going to repeat it and become proficient and master it. But with HR, you literally have to love it, observing people, trying to understand them, listening, asking questions, observations. So those softer skills, take a long time to master, and you never really get there. But it's the it's the the journey, the quest. I always the toughest person, I want to win them over. I want to crack the code. I want to crack them open to find out what makes them tick at the heart so that I can really understand them. And that's what I'm really good at. And that's only when I can truly have a relationship where I can help them to achieve their potential. But it's an art.
Yeah, it's definitely a critical leader skill set to be able to create relationships with the people that you're working in. It's very much understood that when you're doing that from a HR perspective, because it's around the individual employee. I wonder though, have you met resistance from people in your travel when you're trying to build those relationships? Because I've met some human beings that view work as a very functional thing. They go do a job and they go home and they live their life very separate to work. I'm not saying I'm not putting a value judgment on that. I think, hey, everyone's got their own motivations to be at work. But from a HR practitioner point of view, how difficult is it when you get someone that self-discloses that they don't give a crap about anything else? They're there to do a job and they don't want to enter into relationships or give more of themselves. How do you address that when you meet employees that are like this? Because these people exist and it's part of the world of work.
Yeah, I think it's full self-disclosure. If they're being upfront about it, that's great. That actually helps me. So you need all types of people in a business. You can't have all the high performers. You need a balance, and they often have really good mental health and balance, and they are more sustainable over a period of time. So their performance, whilst it might not be high performance, actually levels out to be really sustainable, and they end up being actually your best people. And they've got a good humor, and they're great.
Oh, okay, okay. So you
You
mentioned
need
about,
all types.
sorry, no, you go. Sorry.
You need that diversity.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think
Yeah, I don't believe people should be robots, 365 days of the year. I'd actually prefer they're not, that they're human. They're a lot easier to work with.
people's motivations to do work, to be leaders, comes from very different places. You can't just assume that everyone's there for the same reason.
Yes,
That's your motivation to
yes,
be at work. Obviously, you want your leaders in all parts of the business to be working to a similar goal. But my reason for being in the joint might be completely different
yeah,
to yours, and that's okay,
yeah,
as long as
that's
it doesn't
okay.
cause roadblocks in how the business operates. And that's where I think your function, that HR function, sorry, is critically important. And it sort of leads
Yeah,
me to my next question, if I can ask you,
please.
to what degree do leaders need to be separate from the HR function? Is there good to have some distance between your
Yeah,
operational leadership, your strategic leadership, and that HR needs to be separate for some one reason or another? Does that ring true,
yeah,
or does it
yeah,
not work like
definitely.
that? Okay. Yep.
Yeah, if an employee confidentially tells me something, I always say to them, that's in the vault, that's with me, if they do not want it repeated. So often, certain things are sensitive and are confidential and they don't want things disclosed. So I think when someone takes the time, whether it be a leader or an employee, to not disclose something, then I do hold it. And I always say to managers, if excuse the French, shit hits the fan, let me know. Okay. Come to me before it happens and I'll help you. and we'll work it out together. Because if it does, it's very hard for HR then, because we have to balance business and balance employee, or balance business and leader. If I can just know a few things so that I can sort things out before it's fully exposed, that's quite a good thing HR can have in their kit bag. And that's where you get that separation. You're not disclosing it to the business. It's just not at the point in which it needs to. And I think that's actually a really healthy thing to do.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. When you meant it, you meant before the shit hits the fan. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd clarify that. Yeah, we don't want too many of those hitting the fan if we can avoid it. Sonya, let me ask you as a takeaway for those that are listening to this or watching the podcast, what tips would you give those leaders that are watching this around better practice when it comes to HR, at least from that leader perspective? What could we put in our toolkit to make us better?
Yeah, I think it's really time for new leadership. Spending time at Melbourne Uni with the graduates recently, the things they're interested in: diversity, inclusion, empowerment, and more compassionate, more empathy. To see that in leadership and more corporate social responsibility, more leaders understanding AI, neurodiversity, that's what really excites them. So I think my number one tip would have a growth mindset, continue to learn and to be a good global citizen and understand the issues and what happens around you, and try not to get really insular, to always listen and learn. Like young people, they understand the inequalities of the world, and they have a lot of value to bring. So whenever you're in a room, it's taking in the thinking and the ideas of everyone in the room, not just going in with your own sort of agenda or set way of thinking. It's just to really lean in, listen, and find a solution as a group. In leadership is going to be creating more value than not.
Sonya, thank you for sharing that. You're not the first to bring up the phrase a growth mindset. I think at the core of that, again, this is only a personal view, that idea, of lifelong learning and being open to having some discussions is critically important. I think there's always going to be a debate on all of those issues you mentioned about how do you make some of those things real in some organizations versus others, and how do you start to accommodate young new talent coming into the business, where I get the sense from talking to people of my vintage, so those in their 50s, that some of the new generation coming through have some mindsets that are qualitatively diametrically opposed to how you might view the world. And I think that's all for the good, because it creates a discussion around certain things. And I figure I've got some life left to lead. If I can have a debate that makes me better at my job, or helps someone on the come up to be better at their job, or even if we don't agree, which is also fine, at least having the toolkit to debate, to discuss, to analyze, to extract the bits that you need to make you a better professional is where I think is the best way you can end up. Now, the new generation coming through, they're going to be the leaders of the future. So you would hope that they don't develop a rigid mindset as they start to age in roles, because one day they're going to be me in the role. They're going to be in their 50s, and they're going to see a new generation coming through. And these kind of conversations will come back to haunt you if you're not at least prepared to have the discussion. Does that ring true for you, mate?
Yes. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, no. Well, look, Sonya, thank you for your time today. This will be hopefully the first of a few discussions, because I'd really like to get into a discussion with you about your pathway in leadership on another podcast, if you're happy to keep chatting with us.
Sure. Sounds fun.
Excellent. So for those listening, I've been speaking to Sonya Law. Sonya, thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you, Eric. Thanks.
That concludes our podcast for today. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to thank Sonya for sharing her insights with respect to leadership and its intersection with human resources. This podcast was very much an introduction to the topic area, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts around HR and the leadership function. Thank you for your support of the podcast. Please drop a like, subscribe if you can to help grow the channel. Have a great day, rest of your week, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode of Talking Leadership TV.